What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been in Japan for over 20 years, and if anyone were to ask me what do I really like to try to do on this channel, I would answer that I really like taking on topics that other YouTubers or social media influencers, or even just foreigners in Japan in general, don't like to bring up, talk about, maybe sweep under the rug, or try to pretend don't exist. And I also like to take topics that maybe are trending about Japan, but I feel I can offer a different perspective on them, or a different angle, or go into more depth possibly. You see, my favorite type of comment that I get on my channel is when people say, "I'm so happy you made this video. No one else has talked about this," or "No one else has addressed this in this way." That kind of comment is really gratifying. I really enjoy it when I get comments like that. So today I'm going to be going over a list of several things that I feel like foreign residents like myself avoid acknowledging, and that influencers or YouTubers tend to not really bring up or even possibly shy away from. One thing I do not shy away from once a month is calling out the sponsor of today's video, SakuraCo. They sponsor a video every month, and I love the fact that I'm partnered with them because they took a chance on a pretty small channel. We partnered up when I was still like 6,000 subscribers or something like that. SakuraCo is an artisan snack box that comes from Japan. It's curated with a bunch of sweets and treats that you can enjoy, like a taste of Japan, anywhere in the world that you would order them from. I will talk more about them later. But first, let's get into the inspiration for this video. Why did I decide to make this video today? It's actually based on something that I talked about in a video in December, and I got several people commenting that, "Hey, thanks for saying the quiet part out loud. Hey, that was really interesting. You actually were willing to say what so many residents of Japan don't want to admit." And that is, I came to Japan as a young man. I was in my early 20s, and I admitted in that video in December that one of the things I enjoyed about living here was the fact that I stood out, that I enjoyed the extra attention that having blonde hair and blue eyes gave me. The extra attention from the ladies was not unappreciated. Let's be perfectly honest about this. And so I got those comments that people were saying, "Hey, that's something that a lot of foreign guys don't seem to like to say out loud or admit that they enjoy that." So there you have it. I'm fully confessing that it was something that really made me like living in Japan when I first came here. Now, as I go through the other points in this video, and I have 5 more, they are pretty well balanced, I think. There's one that I think is a little bit negative towards Japan, one that is more positive towards Japan, and the others I think are neutral, kind of like the first one, like whether enjoying standing out is a positive or negative thing. I'll leave that up to you to decide. I don't think it's really either or. But the second one is related to the first, and that is foreign women in Japan that stand out as a visible foreigner will also get attention, but not always of the type that you want to receive. I have to say that pretty much every foreign female acquaintance and friend that I have has at least one story of being propositioned very inappropriately. Just being like out and out asked, "Hey, let's go to the Love Hotel." Like, not go on a date, but like, let's just go get it on. Or being followed from one train car to the next, or being followed outside the station so they didn't want to walk home because they didn't want the creep to figure out where they lived. Underwear being stolen from their clothesline. I don't know if it's because of Hollywood that makes it seem that foreign women are more promiscuous or easier to get in bed, or I think there's also an aspect of, there's sometimes an assumption that if you look a certain way, you must be here to work in after hours services, so to speak. Sorry, I'm beating around the bush with the terms I'm using. I don't know what kind of words YouTube eventually decides to flag on videos. But yeah, basically being treated like objects and dealing with scary things like stalking, etc. We often talk about Japan being a very, very safe country, and it is, but we have to, and when I say we, I mean foreign men, we really need to acknowledge that the experience is different for us compared to foreign women. We think it's really safe. For foreign women, sure, it's safe. Someone might dive into the comments and say, well, try being a woman at 2 a.m. in Detroit. Like, well, yeah, it's relative, of course. I mean, if you compare Japan to a lot of places that are less safe in general, sure, Japan is very, very safe. But the fact that it's relative is actually important. The argument I'm making is that women, relative to men, have it less safe in Japan. And that's something that foreign men, I feel, need to acknowledge and realize more often, because we live our own life and we think, well, these weird things have never happened to me, so they must not happen to anyone else. And that's just not the case, and it needs to be mentioned. Now, the next one I'm going to go into is more of a positive bent. This is not a video to bash or praise Japan in any way. It's just addressing things that foreigners tend to not address in YouTube videos or on Instagram or even in conversations to each other quite often, I would say. The second one is the business work-life culture. If you see work-life balance talked about on social media or in YouTube videos, it tends to be very negative about black companies and employees working overtime for no pay and not being given breaks, and of course karoshi, the famous death by overwork that happens in Japan. The reality is that it's not just nothing but horror stories in Japan corporations and businesses. The truth is, many people who work in corporations and businesses take a really strong pride in what they do, and they do the overtime because they really value what they're doing. They have a loyalty to the company and to their coworkers, and they act out of this sense of group belonging with the people that they work with. They identify with their company and what their company does. They don't mind or even enjoy going out to drinks with coworkers after work or wining and dining clients if that's what the business calls for. It's really too much of a blanket statement to be like Japan is all terrible work-life balance and the life of the salaryman is just absolutely terrible every time. Yes, it's true that while employment is something that's less and less offered by Japanese companies. I'm not going to get into the changing economics. That's not my area of expertise. But it is a fact that the people who are hired on more temporary contract bases choose to stay with companies a lot of the time. They really enjoy what they do at that company. They recontract, they keep working for them. And there's a continuing loyalty amongst the people who work there that you wouldn't expect if they were being mistreated horrendously. So the work-life culture is a bit overblown as being too much of a terrible or overbearing system. Over the past several years, I've been teaching this community outreach course at my university, and most of the people who sign up for that are retirees. So when I am interacting with them in the class, very often the topic of what they used to do will come up, and it's always a sense of pride in which they talk about the company they worked for, the type of industry they were in, the projects that they were a part of, the overseas trips that they had to do as part of their work. They really exuded this pride and sense of accomplishment of what they did, what they were involved in. It wasn't like, them sitting on their deathbed thinking, oh, I wish I'd never worked all those long hours, It sounded like they treasured every moment of what they did. Okay, maybe treasured every moment is a bit too strong, but they definitely enjoyed their work and felt they were a part of something important. And even so far as appreciated all of the extra work and time and effort that they had to put in to that particular company, that particular industry. Now, speaking of company pride and putting a lot of effort into the work that they do, let's hear a word from our sponsor, SakuraCo. One thing I really like to do with my videos is try to make them very balanced and nuanced. I don't always succeed, but I would say SakuraCo, today's sponsor, really does succeed at this. They do an excellent job of curating boxes that are balanced from salty, sweet, delicious, and frankly just attractive. I always enjoy getting the box every month. This month's theme is Valentine's in Kyoto, which I don't know about you, but it's hard to think of a more romantic place than Kyoto. These well-balanced curated boxes have 20 different items in them. Salty, sweet, there's always a premium selected tea, and there's always a houseware or everyday Japanese item, such as dishware, chopsticks, cloth goods, etc. SakuraCo's mission is for you to experience Japan from the comfort of your own home through SakuraCo boxes. SakuraCo is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box subscription that allows you to support genuine local makers of wagashi sweets across Japan. Each box is carefully curated with traditional and seasonal snacks like mochi, dorayaki, manju, and many more. It includes signature Japanese teas, the exclusive homeware item, and they globally deliver this authentic taste of Japan to you at your home. Each box includes a cultural booklet. It features a snack description, allergen information, and fun insights about Japanese culture. I really enjoy reading about the places that produce these sweets. I'm going to try today this matcha tsujiri no sato, and they have a wonderful entire page dedicated to this crafter of this sweet. This is a wafer-thin rolled cookie with stone-milled uji matcha cream from Kyoto, which I'm really looking forward to trying. I'm going to pair it with this caramel bergamot hojicha. Wow, immediate caramelly smell. Let that steep a moment, and let's get into this delicious looking cookie. And you can really see that uji matcha in the middle there. This looks really delicious, I can't wait. First the sweet, and then we'll get the bitterness of the tea. Creamy, matcha-y. It's like sweet on the first hit, and then the matcha bitterness comes afterwards. Now let's see how the tea and tea match up. That's what I really love about these teas. The fragrance comes through, but it doesn't taste like caramel. It just tastes like a really nice hojicha or roasted green tea. I am so happy that they've included these sobaboro cookies. Every time I go to Kyoto, I always buy these. This is something that I always bring back from Kyoto because I love them so much. The exclusive homeware item this month is actually really cool. It's a vintage kimono cloth pouch. As it's featured in the booklet, this group has been making these since 2021, and they're graduates of a Japanese art university. The art of kimono holds centuries of culture with every creative step, from the preparation of natural materials to the dyeing, the weaving, the shaping, and the finishing. So each kimono pouch is imbued with this human touch. I love Fushimi Inari Taisha, the shrine in Kyoto with all of the red arch tori gates. Obviously, they're going to eat this Kyoto tori senbei. Okay, light, crispy, delightful. What a beautiful snack. Okay, I lied. I'm gonna dive into these as well. So simple, but so good. Okay, let's get back to the video. Now the next one I'm going to talk about, it doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right, or you're in the middle of the political spectrum. If you're living in Japan, I feel like one thing that foreigners genuinely appreciate about this country that we don't often bring up or try to keep on the lowdown perhaps, it's so nice to be sheltered from the outrage and I'm offended culture that we perceive abroad, especially in America, and I think to a strong extent in the UK and some other places, where basically we live in the safety of not worrying about everything being politicized, for example. Like, we watched during the pandemic from Japan as America became super politicized over masks. Like, if someone's wearing or not wearing a mask, you know exactly who they voted for or on which side of the left-right divide they're on. This whole like politics, tribal identity, and purity tests that both sides seem to have out for each other is just absent in Japan, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, because Japan is famously known as the society of all these rules, all these, you know, unwritten, unspoken rules, but people follow them in Japanese society because that's how Japanese society works, like being quiet on the trains, sorting your garbage. It goes on and on. So despite the fact that Japan is a society where people are expected to conform and really act in a certain way to be a good civilian and a good neighbor and a good part of the collective, well, there isn't this outrage or offense if someone gets something wrong. In fact, the Japanese tend to be kind of infinitely patient, or at least able to gaman, like keep their feelings in check so that they don't lash out or cancel anyone for having made some kind of social error or social mistake. And it's really nice, it's really comfortable to live in a place where you can, obviously you have to try to fit in and do your best to follow the rules, but if you mess up something along the way, you're not going to get, you're not going to have people digging up Twitter posts from 10 years ago or calling up your office and saying this person should be fired because, they didn't sort their garbage correctly. Like, that's that's not happening, thankfully. At least, well, I don't think it's happened. I mean, if it's happened to you, let us know in the comments. One case in particular I remember is the Boston Museum of Fine Arts did this exhibition of Monet's works, and it was like about Japanisme, where the French and kind of European artists in general being very influenced by Japanese art of the 19th century. And they had these paintings on display, like Monet's wife in a kimono, and they actually had kimono on hand for visitors to the museum to try on. And these activists got all upset, saying that you're treating Asian culture as a costume and da-da-da-da-da, like it's outrageous that you would allow people who are not Japanese to try on traditional Japanese dress. And what they didn't know, or just didn't want to acknowledge, was that NHK, the national broadcaster of Japan, was the one who sponsored this event and provided the kimonos and wanted Americans to experience a little bit of Japanese culture at this museum exhibition. And so these activists were just upset at what they saw as Asian cosplay, when the actual hosts of the events were Japanese and were the ones encouraging it to happen. So that's kind of a good example of this lovely separation that we have here in Japan from that culture. We don't have to worry about that kind of thing. However, this leads to a very important one that I need to talk about, which is something that exists as a very double-edged sword. And that is foreigners. We don't like to talk about it. I think that some foreigners will complain behind the backs of others about this sort of thing. But in general, it's not something that's brought up or acknowledged. And that is, it's quite easy to live as a foreigner in Japan and do something which is called playing the gaijin card, or doing a gaijin smash. What that basically is when you feel like you can get away with doing something that's outside of Japanese norms or rules, and you feel you're not going to get called on it, again, because Japanese are very patient and very understanding, and kind of the default tends to often be like, oh, well, we don't expect foreigners to be able to do all of the social rules correctly. And so some people live here for years and continue to take advantage of this. I've walked into a dead end. I have to go back the other way. And by taking advantage of this, I mean they judge a situation and they think, well, all right, the Japanese way of doing this is way too bothersome. And these Japanese people that are kind of observing me at the moment look like pushovers. They're not going to call me out on it. And so you do the thing that's not very Japanese, that's very foreigner, and lo and behold, you don't get called out on it, and you just skate through life. And you think, that was easy. It's so easy to live in Japan as a foreigner, because I don't have to live by their rules, and they won't even call me out on it. I can give a specific example. There is a person I used to work with at a place where I no longer work, who used to bring his mail in, and he would foist the mail on to the secretary, one of the secretaries that worked with us. And basically, because he didn't speak any Japanese and he couldn't read Japanese, he was making the secretary translate his mail for him and letting him know what's important and what's not important. And basically helping him through all the junk mail he'd get on a daily basis. And she hated it. Like, it was not her job. It was definitely not in her job description. And eventually she applied to switch departments just to get away from him. Meaning she never confronted him. Like, she never said, this is not my job. This is not what I'm supposed to do. She just moved. And that's an example of Japanese patience and the double-edged sword part of using the gaijin smash, or using, rules for thee and not for me. And that is, while you might get away with it, you're not earning any respect, you're not earning any acceptance, you're not going to end up being seen as a very valuable part of the group. People are going to know about it and kind of look down on you for it, and you'll probably be ignorant of all of that. And that's why, if you're going to gaijin smash, it has to be really, really sparingly, and it's definitely not something that I would recommend. So the last one I'm going to talk about is something that I think foreigners, we all realize and acknowledge, but we don't often name it for what it is or talk about it in these terms, and that is, Japan is a great place to feel kind of weight shamed. I think on average, foreigners in Japan are in much better shape than we would be if we'd remained in our home country. I know that's speculating and an impossible thing to prove, but I think the averages of obesity and being overweight and high BMIs is going to bear that out. The thing is, just by existing in Japan, of course there's a lifestyle difference. The portion sizes, you're probably drinking unsweetened tea instead of soda and those sorts of things. But the truth is, when you're constantly surrounded by slender people, there's kind of a pressure to stay in shape yourself. And that's not to say that Japanese are super in shape. Again, it's a lifestyle thing, it's a food thing, and obviously there's genetics involved, that they're going to be more slender in general. But the pressure is there. Certainly, if we go back to my original point in this video where I talked about, appreciating standing out and getting appreciative looks from the ladies, well, after I moved back to Japan after graduate school, I was the heaviest I've ever been. Graduate school living, being in America, I'd gained quite a bit of weight. And I just remember, riding the train, and I didn't get the looks or the second glances and things that I remembered from my first tenure in Japan, the first time I lived here. And I got into running, and I lost all that weight, and lo and behold, okay, all right, I guess I'm still somewhat attractive, because it was just the weight, I guess. And that lesson kind of stuck with me, and the realization that, so many of my colleagues and the people around me, everyone is in shape. When you think of, whenever I go back to the States, it's one of my culture shocks at how many just big people there are. I do think that one of the underlying things that we don't like to admit is there is this kind of constant pressure to not be the giant foreigner amidst all the slender Japanese people. And that's most definitely a thing. I acknowledge it. I admit that it is definitely a motivating factor for me, that I want to stay in shape so that I'm not, I don't come to stand out for that reason. And so that's why I continue to run and why I go to the gym very regularly. All right, that is my list of things that foreigners tend to not talk about out loud, and that you probably haven't heard other YouTubers or social media influencers talk about. Let us know in the comments if you have any of your own that you would like to add, or any that you think I should have talked about. I'm always interested to read the conversations down there. It's really fascinating to me to watch how, I watch a lot of YouTube, and I see videos with 4 or 5 times the number of views that mine do, but have half the number of comments. Like, the community of people who go down and comment on my videos is really cool to see. And I still try to reply to most all of them. I know I don't get them all anymore. I pretty much read all of them, but I don't always have time to reply to everything. But please comment below and join the conversations there. Also, remember, you can get $5 off your first order with SakuraCo if you use my code Exjapter at checkout. And that is a very direct way to help the channel financially. However, please remember that hitting the like button, subscribing, and sharing this video is the best way to get my videos out to a larger audience. It's great if you can buy SakuraCo and enjoy those products because they really are special and I highly recommend them. I love them myself. But again, like, share, subscribe, those are the best ways to help my channel grow. Again, thank you so much for watching this particular video. I hope you enjoyed it, hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.